Welcome to What One Thing, one business, one story, and one lesson to take away in action every fortnight for small business owners looking to grow. I'm Hayley Baxter from Corporate Accounting.
And I'm Phil Davenport from a firm IT.
This episode is a bit different. We're looking back on the year, what surprised us, what challenged us, and what we've learned running our own businesses day to day.
No highlight reel, no pretending that we've cracked everything, just honest reflections on growth, mistakes, and things we're taking into the year ahead.
So if you're wrapping up the year thinking what's actually changed for me, this one's for you.
Hayley, let's start on a positive. What did you think was going to be hard this year? And it actually wasn't.
I'm going to say networking. So networking has never been my favourite thing, and it's definitely been a skill and a process that I've had to consciously work on and curate a process for, I suppose I'd say. And I don't dread going networking, but for a lot of the time, I'm always like, oh, could do this instead, could do that instead. And actually, I don't. And then, you're pulling up to it and you're like, oh, I don't know anybody at this event. And I don't know. It's a funny feeling. It's, that's just me. But actually, I've absolutely really loved doing the networking I've done this year. I've met so many brilliant people and created so many really good relationships that is, I think that's been a really pivotal thing for me this year. So that's what I would say. What about you?
Well, I will start by saying that I have genuinely been inspired and maybe even a little bit envious of your journey in networking, because you've thrown yourself into speaking at Emma Hines' business event, going to Daniel Priestley's business event. You've really taken on the kind of go-getter, say yes to everything attitude that I perhaps have not been so enthusiastic with. What did I think would be hard that actually wasn't? I think extracting myself from the business to work on the business and freeing up my own time to do events like networking. And I'm going to preempt the next question, which was what did I think would be easy but has turned out to be hard? And that is, after extracting myself from the business, I have found it very hard to schedule in activity and to hold myself accountable. And to that end, I've started working with a coach, and I've actually started scheduling appointments with my virtual assistant, Joe Taylor, shout out, of Task List Assist, to work with me and help me to knuckle down and focus on what actually needs to be done. And I'm early in that journey because it's taken me almost until the end of the year to deal with probably my own ego in saying, actually, you know what, I need to reach out and get some help and some structure around this. I can't just go it my own. But I think that's probably the thing that I thought would be really easy to do. You set these huge, ambitious goals and you say, right, okay, 3 hours cold calling. And then you sit there and you think, oh, I could update a server. I could have a look at a security policy. I could ping out a few emails. I can send a couple of LinkedIn messages. How about yourself, Hayley? What did you think would be easy, but has turned out to be hard?
There's probably a few things, but just reflecting on what you've just said, that is still a challenge for me. The way that I manage my diary and my time and trying to do tasks that need to be done and focus on them, my energy levels have a lot to do with when I can perform best, if that's the right way to word it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I definitely perform better in the morning with like focused tasks and need to get stuff done. But then what I try to do is do everything in the morning and then have a meltdown because you can't physically do that. But that's like still an ongoing process of learning. So I definitely don't think that you're on your own now with that. And I've actually come up with a new plan for next year about how I'm going to try and manage my diary. So that's going to see how January plays out. So it'll be interesting to see how you get along working with Joe, and if that helps really make a difference, because I just think it's an ever ongoing battle. And I could, exactly like you've just said, or could just be getting along with that rather than doing this. And also there's something about I really struggle with marketing, social media, all that stuff. I do get some help with it, but I still do a lot of it myself. But that's something else I'm going to change. So there's something about not trying to force yourself to do the tasks that are they're really not meant for you in life, and embracing that a little bit more. So going back to the question about something I thought would be easy, but was actually hard, I'm going to say team. I'm going to say team management. I'm quite a hands-off manager, supervisor. in that kind of role. I try to get my team to a point where they're very self-sufficient and, can do things of their own accord and they don't need micromanaging. But actually, I think my expectation of what their strengths are and what they can do and the reality of that hasn't been very joined up this year. And I think that's taken me quite a while to realise. And it's perhaps something I didn't, the team have been in place for quite a while now. We were going into a new year and I was like, you know what, they can just get on with it. But actually, there are some things that they still need support with because that isn't their strength to do that. And I don't think I'd quite cottoned on to that early enough in the year. And that's caused a few challenging moments along the way.
That's incredible honesty, isn't it? That really is. That's great. Yeah, great answer.
What's one thing then? So we're right at the end of 2025. What's one thing you have learned this year and how has it changed the way you run your business?
I think there's been a couple of key points. So I'm going to go probably with two things that somewhat intersect. So the first thing I've learned is the power of the peer. So the amount of success that I've had through collaborating in my IT peer group, and also the amount of events and things that I've done through collaborating with yourself and being open to that and being humble with that and trying to move the ego out of the way. And the second point that we've discussed in a few other topics as well, which is opening myself up and saying, I should be paying somebody to help me with this. I shouldn't be doing this on my own. Yes, in my mind, I can write a phenomenal LinkedIn post every day, but when I'm in a stressful situation and I've got other things cascading around me, I simply don't have the time and the energy to do it. So actually, it's better to get somebody to author posts that I 100% obviously read through, edit myself, etc., etc. But to get somebody to help me produce that content so that it is consistent and I have got posts going out regularly, I think that's something that I now need to push on with. And I know that we're working on that, Hayley, for the podcast, so that we have that regular consistency. Yeah, it's been taking some of the hands off the reins of things and not thinking that I'm going to be the greatest at every job, which is maybe a little bit self-deprecating, but more realizing that, I need to take support here and I've got a phenomenal network around me that can help me. How about yourself?
I would really echo what you said. So something that's been really different for me this year in business than in any other year. And I've been part of masterminds and accountancy groups for a few different years. But this last year, the group of accountants and bookkeepers and other business owners that I have met along the way and worked with and actually become, more than not I don't know what the right word is to explain it, but we've become, I suppose in many ways, we've become friends. And I don't think I've ever kind of opened or let myself be open to that before. I'm quite like put a wall in place or whatever. Whereas this year I've kind of really gone the other way and embraced it. And for me, that's been a really big learning about how it surprises me how much of a difference that's made, not just to my business, but to me just as a person and my life, I suppose. And that's been something that's been really surprising. And it's definitely changed the way that I run my business and I do my business, because you've got somebody to really talk about things with that you wouldn't talk about with other people that actually really understand. And I think, and I know that we've talked about this a lot, like where, you're like, well, I can't do this because of that, and the other. And then you sat in a room with, 10 other people and they're like, well, actually, you can do that because I did it. And two, all of these reasons. I'm totally stealing your words now. No, but that's really real. That the power of that is really real. And it just helps. I don't know whether it's a confidence thing or whether it's a permission thing, that then you can go back into your business and do that. But that whole combination has really made a big difference, I think, in this year. And it's been a lesson. It has.
Yeah, there's so many examples, isn't there? The most famous being, is it Roger Bannister and his 4-minute mile, and that nobody could do it and it was unbreakable. Then one person did it and then everybody could do it. And I think if you can be really open and really transparent with a peer group, then you get that. the one advice that I'd give to people who join a peer group is you probably need to join one where you're paying what you believe to be, not a top heavy amount, but an amount that almost hurts a little bit, so that you've really got that commitment. And then the more you find yourself defending something from the peer, they say, why aren't you doing X? Why aren't you putting your prices up? And you come back, you say, look, my customers won't do this. I've got their blah, 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 blah. Normally, the more correct the peer group are. Normally, when you watch other people, the more defensive you are, the more actually you should stop and listen to that advice.
Yeah, they're two really good things. And the other thing I'd add to that about advice is if you're part of a group and it doesn't feel right, or you're not connecting with those people in that way, that doesn't mean the process doesn't work. They're just perhaps not the right people. And again, that's something else that I always thought it was just me, and that's just not what I'm just not that person that does that. But actually, I think when you find a right group of people, it can be very different and can be really powerful.
Yeah, and it's not just a group in that. We've been to business expos together, we've been to networking events together, and you've seen me walk over to other IT people and
Yeah.
I'll be friendly and I'll be chatting, and I can feel how closed they are and how
Yeah.
little they want to reveal. And, and those aren't the people that you want to be around. They might be within their own group, and there's probably a group of people like them and they all understand how, but yeah, there's definitely massive personality types. And I suppose we go back to people by people, don't we? And
Yes. Yeah.
it's exactly the same in these peer groups.
It is. It definitely is. So, what's one thing you would do differently?
One thing that I would do differently for this year, what an incredible question that is. I want to give you a really honest and open answer. I think I would accept early that I've not got the motivation to do cold calling, but that I need better processes to follow up and more. I don't like the word automation, because I would prefer in the main part that I kind of try and get in touch with a smaller number of people and get in touch with them genuinely and see if we can work together. But when I say automation, I mean that I have reminders, or I've got somebody saying to me, Phil, you had a conversation with so and so, you've not touched base with them for 3 weeks. So that level of automation where I'm still writing the LinkedIn message, the email, or making the phone call, but having a better system to make that happen. I think that's what I would do differently. That's the thing that I would have really focused my start of the year on. And I think I would have had better results as a business by doing that. How about yourself, Haley?
So, the thing, I get I give a really honest answer with this. I What I would do differently. So, I implemented a process in my own business from August. So, my financial year runs August to July, and in the past, I've been through a process where I talk about becoming my best client, because what happens is you leave your own book work and your own accounts till the last minute, and they're always behind. You don't walk the walk, basically. And I changed that a few years ago, where I was like, no, my bookkeeping is the first bookkeeping that gets done, my invoice is the first to go out, and really embrace that process, which changed it. That did change my business, and that helps when it's helped me in lots of different ways interacting with clients. But what I have done since August is kind of take that to the next level. So I'm launching a new service in January, which is all around supporting more on an FD level, supporting businesses in that way. And what I did from August this year is I've implemented those processes into my business, which I hadn't done that before. So this is things like having a proper cash flow, having a proper budget, actually then using those monthly, not just doing it and then never looking at it again, and actually really going a bit further and doing to the point where I'm doing proper management accounts every single month for my business, and really having time in the diary to sit down and go through them like I would with a client. And that's taken quite a lot of discipline, as I'm sure you can imagine. But I've done it. I've really embraced it, and I've really done it. I've done cash flow, I've done forecast, I've done it all. And you know what? I wish I'd have done that years ago. And that's like how much of a lesson is that when I'm the one that goes on about it to other business owners. Again, I'm like, well, I'm small, I don't need that. I know what, but actually That's made a really big difference in the past few months. That's the thing that I would have done differently. I would have done that from the very beginning of the year.
I think we can all count ourselves guilty of not measuring and checking every month, whether it be on our health, whether it be our books, whether it be our IT, whether it be our processes, our procedures, our staff, whatever we want to do. I think that's just a really vital lesson, isn't it? And whether
Yeah.
you work with an expert to help you out or whether you kind of stay at a basic level, just that initial, do I check this every month? Do I look for differences every month? Yeah, is vital as business owners, isn't it? What's one word to describe this year?
I have a few that I could have contacted. So determination is one, because I definitely think that makes a difference. Like, you've got to be determined. You've got to be like, I am going to do it. I am. It's not, I hate the word non-negotiable, but it's that kind of feeling and not losing that. Cause I think it's really easy to get into the day to day and, I've got to deal with clients and I've got to do this, I've got to do that. But no, the thing I want to get to and the thing that I want to drive more of is this. And I've got to be determined to do it. That's one. Visibility is always one in so
I
many
think
ways.
this year for me has been growth. Now, that's not necessarily success, is in, the business has doubled in turnover or we've made millions of pounds of profit, but growth in as much as seeing my own flaws, growth in as much as being on a journey of continual learning. And the business has grown as well, which is fantastic. I think growth as in I've realized I need to get processes in place and that it's more of a mindset growth, and hopefully the business will continue to grow as my mindset grows. But I think growth is made, I mean, I could probably use it every year, but I think maybe this year and the growth, and certainly working with your health self, Hayley, has been a big part of that, is learning where you're weaker than you thought you were, learning, especially in my case, where you've maybe acted too rapidly and made decisions too quickly, and learning how to put systems in place to try and make those decisions better the next time you encounter that situation or a similar situation.
I think the personal growth side of things is often overlooked when people talk about growth. I think that's a really good one.
To add to that, I think with personal growth, the trickiest part is likely that you need external accountability for that personal growth. It's one thing to read a great book, to listen to a great audio book. Then a second step to, put the time in your diary to get all that up and running. But it's a third step to then say, either I'm going to have somebody review this with me every week, or I'm going and I think it's really important that as business owners, we maybe find somebody external that's going to do that, because often our employees don't want to hold us to account,
Yeah.
don't really feel that that's their responsibility. And they're probably correct.
Yes. Yeah. And I think there's something in that about, it goes back to that ego thing, doesn't it? Of asking for help and actually accepting that maybe you don't know it all, which, we all think we do. So I think it's interesting.
I think as business owners, it's very tricky because the road that has led us to opening a business is a little bit like a train heading down the tracks, isn't it? And
Yeah.
that this is the right way. And we've all heard people give us advice not to do this, not to do that, not to take risks. And that advice was somebody who didn't have the same kind of entrepreneurial spirit. And so now we're wary of anybody that gives us advice or tells us that our plan's wrong or that we can't do something. And
Yeah.
that's a really tricky balance.
It is. But I also think the flip side of that is that sometimes and again, this is probably a learning, but those people also, you're like, well, they know better than I do, so I must do what they say. And then you speak to someone else and they have a different view, but they're like, but they must know what they're talking about, so I'll have to do that. And like, you end up like just being like this person that like goes, do, like depending on which person you're talking to, because they're so whatever they are. And when you're a little bit on the other side of that, or you're unsure, or you're going through that development yourself and you're finding your own way, you kind of, you become like this robot that just goes from one thing to another. But I think part of that personal growth journey is actually not listening to those people, but it's listening to it and then finding your own way within that and being, that's okay, that you can do that. You don't have to do it the way, just because this chap's made £2 million doing it that way, doesn't mean you have to do it exactly like that to get the same outcome. People can do things in their own way and still get to similar places. And I think sometimes it's easy in today's world to forget that as well, or to be influenced differently about it.
I think you're completely right with that. We talk about in our peer that it's a framework and that
I love
there
that.
aren't specific answers for things. So when you're trying to copy an entrepreneur, you're not trying to copy their actions, you're trying to copy their why, their framework. I don't know the right way to word that. Whereas, and this might be a little snobbish of me, but in the public school system that we've grown up in, you're taught that there is one correct way, there is one correct answer, and this is the way that you need to do something. Whereas in the entrepreneurial framework, you're told, here is the goal, here is the, maybe not the journey, but the framework of, here's what you need to do. You need to be adding
Yeah.
margin. You need to be looking for growth. You need to be focusing all of your decisions around growth and profit. And that's not negatively saying, I'm not going to spend money training my staff, because you are, because that's again on the growth and profit journey. But
Yeah.
trying to just frame things around that rather than this is the exact way to run a business.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think you've got to remember your own mind in it all, haven't you? And being able to, be confident in that, I suppose. So, what's one thing you're proud of this year?
This year, I'm really proud. And again, I thank you for this. Of we haven't got our system so that I can look at every single thing in our accounts line by line. But we have gone from having maybe 8 or 9 items, in both the income and expenditure, to probably having 15. And that's something that has really helped out itemizing both income and expenditure so that you can see things more clearly. And then that's really allowed me to speak in peer groups and to other business owners much more clearly about where our margins are, where we need to improve, shown gaps much more clearly. Whereas before that, I would just think, well, if I can sell enough and make enough profit, then all of these things would disappear. What are you proud of, Hayley? And you're not allowed
So,
to say help him fill out with his account.
I'm very proud of that. I'm proud. Oh, that it's actually really nice to hear, though. I'm glad. I hope it's real. So, what am I proud of this year? So, the first thing I'm proud of, it's not necessarily a business thing, but it's made a huge difference to me. And that is that I've embraced doing so much exercise this year and doing different things, which I know it's not a business thing, but again, it's one of those things that I think it was March time. And actually, you don't know this, but we had a
This is a
conversation.
first on the pod, everyone.
We had a conversation in, I think it was in April time, and you were talking about you'd been to the gym yesterday, blah 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 blah. I can't remember exactly what you said, but you'd been to the gym and you're probably moaning about something aching. I don't know why, but you said this, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back to the gym. That's what I'm going to. That's what. And I literally that day I signed up to the gym, and since then I've been not consistently every single day or 3 times a week, whatever you're supposed to do, but I've only missed a couple of weeks where I haven't been at all since then. And for me, that's like a really big thing because I do exercise for 3 months and then I never do it again. Or I buy all the stuff and then it just sits in the porch or the attic. So I'm really proud that I've done that. And actually, again, the difference it's made to me as a person doing that. And I've never really felt that before from an exercise point of view. And I don't know whether it's an age thing because I'm getting older and I don't know. I don't know, but I really, if I don't, like, I hadn't been to the gym for a week and I was like, I could feel myself climbing the walls. I was like, I need to go and do something. And it really makes a difference. Really, really does. That's major. So thank you for that. You don't even know that, but
I think the positivity of training, and I think it's best when you're a real beginner, because when you first hit 5 press ups, when you first and you've got those incredible milestones that you're hitting, and it fires you up in life, doesn't it? It does
yeah,
fire you up in life because at the back of your mind all the time that you are getting healthier, you're getting fitter, you're showing discipline, and you're being positive, and you don't need to tell people that. And of course, there's all the other phenomenal benefits. But yeah, incredible work. Well done.
So what about next year then? You got any thoughts on next year, what you're looking forward to, what our focus is going to be? I don't want to be
The,
corny and say, if you sat here in a year's time, what do you hope you've
the
achieved?
huge thing that I've made the mistake of before is planning for 2026 in this case during January of 2026, being held accountable to it at our peer meeting in February of 2026, and already being behind with the goals and setting goals reactively rather than proactively. So, and we'll see when I am sat here in a year's time whether this has paid off. But this is the first time where I've really knuckled down, looked at all the figures, and set some goals for 2026, quarterly goals, with rocks, and then broken down into action points. And I think hit or miss, if I can complete the action points and be held accountable or hold myself accountable, it will set me up brilliantly for 2027, because whether I've hit the target or not, I've got some tangible data of actions that I've taken over a 12-month period that I can then say, okay, how can we make marginal gains to improve this? What
Yeah,
about
love it.
yourself going into 2026, Hayley?
I'm just going to say consistency because I hate it. And I always say I hate it. I really do. But I really I've done again a little bit like you've just said. I've done some planning in the background, got things that are, I've outsourced some things or got help with some things that are going to make a difference. And I would love to have a year where at the end of it, I'm like, you know what? I actually have, nobody can say to me, this business hasn't worked or I haven't achieved what I wanted to achieve because I haven't been consistent. That's what I want to be able to do next year.
I love it. Can I be horrible to you?
Absolutely.
How are you going to keep yourself accountable for that consistency?
I don't know.
You don't have to answer. I think we're recording this on the 17th of December. I
Yes.
think that's going to be your big question to answer for the 1st of January 2026. What does
It,
consistency look like, and how are you going to keep yourself accountable?
yeah. There we go on that cliffhanger.
On that bombshell, I've ruined
Yes.
Hayley's Christmas.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I feel like I do know the answer, to be fair. Thanks so much for joining us. We hope you have enjoyed this episode with a difference.
And if this episode resonated, go back and listen to some of our great episodes from over the year. I would love to hear from you on our What One Thing podcast page, or feel free to message either Hayley or myself direct on LinkedIn to let us know what you've got planned for 2026 and what one thing is going to drive your business forward.